Alright guys, so it's about a month before trapping season starts, and getting ready to dye traps and you know, make final preparations, and thought I'd take you along this year and let you see kind of how I do it. First things first, we have to acquire the stuff to dye the traps with, and the reason I wait this late in the year is because of this is whenever the walnuts fall. You can see all around me there's walnuts. I'm standing underneath a big walnut tree, and that's how and what I use to dye my traps with. So you can see here in my garbage can I've got probably the equivalent of about 3 5-gallon buckets full of walnuts down there, and that's what we're going to use to make our dye. So after they fall on the ground and, you know, they get start turning a little black, that's about the right time to get them, I found. And what we're going to do is we're going to put them in our dye pot there and put them in water and let that good dye soak into that water. So anyway, this is the first step. Like I said, I know not everybody has walnut trees, but I think I think you can do this with oak leaves and birch bark and a few other things if I'm not mistaken, but my preferred method is walnuts. It gets a real nice dark color to your traps. So first step, we're going to take our walnuts home and get them in our dye pot and get them soaking. Alright, so walnuts are in the boiling pot. You can see this is just an old boiling pot. I've had it for years. It's just about 2/3 of a 55-gallon drum set up. I do wood. I boil all my traps with wood. I'm not that big on, you gotta have propane and everything, but you know, can't overcomplicate this at all. It's put the walnuts in, fill the boil tub up with water. Whenever I boil my traps in the spring, I have a nozzle on here, and I'll boil my traps, and then any, you know, remaining wax that's on the traps, before I pull it, I'll have the water level up over this valve, and I'll just simply turn this valve and drain off a little bit of water, and it pulls all that wax. It's floating on the top off, and then you're pulling your traps up through clean water. But anyway, real simple setup. We'll get some water in here, and then all we're going to do is once a day come out here and just kind of give it a stir, and you'll slowly see the water turn blacker and blacker. And you know, this is Monday I'm going to do this, and by Saturday or Sunday we'll pull the walnuts out, smash them one more time, and then that water will be ready for dye. So it doesn't take too long whenever your walnuts are already kind of in this stage of decay. So we'll get it filled up, and we'll get back with you whenever we get ready to dye traps. Alright, so our dye here has been sitting for about 5 days now. Like I said, you can see how dark and almost thick that the water has been. You know, these walnuts, they do a real good job. So anyway, what we're going to do now is I've got it set up underneath my boiling pot here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to build a fire underneath it, and we're going to get her up to a boil, and then after it boils for just a little while, then I'm going to pull most of the walnuts out. But I always like to just let it boil a little bit with the walnuts in, to pull just a little bit remaining out. But if you leave them in the whole time, the walnuts, they get kind of stuck in the jaws, you know, in between the traps. It's kind of just a pain. So I like to pull most of them out. So we'll get a fire going and get things set up, and we'll start dyeing some traps. Alright, so you can see there I've got a good rolling boil. I've had that for about 10-15 minutes, and so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull as many of the walnuts out as I can, and then we'll get ready to go ahead and start dyeing our traps. Alright, so we got a good hard boil going. We got most of our walnuts pulled out. Now we're just going to come over here. We're going to grab a bunch of traps. I tie my traps up into bundles of 5, and we're just going to put them down in there. let them boil for a little while. Kind of keeps things a little bit more organized if you bundle them. So we'll grab enough bundles there that'll be covered by the water. And we'll get to set to boiling them, and we'll let them. You'll see the water will stop boiling because you're adding so much cold steel, but then we'll let it bring up to a boil there again, and then let it set for about 15 minutes or so, and we'll test them. Once they look good and black, we'll take them out. All right, so our trap's been in here for about 15 minutes or so. I mean, there's no science to this whatsoever. It's just you can pull them out and you can check them, and you know, if they look dark, then they're good. I've got just a little garden tool here. I don't know if you can see that, but they're nice and black. So we'll go ahead and we'll take them out. And what I've got is I've just got my trailer set up over there, and that's where I'm going to just put the traps. You don't really want to put them on this ground. You can see there's a lot of pine needles around. They'll stick to them. But we'll have them set there, and then we'll move on with the waxing process. Okay, so right there I just laid out a batch that's not been dyed, and you can see the very drastic difference here that you know, the dyeing makes. And like I said, you can do quite a few at a time if you get the right setup. Like right there I had 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 32 traps in there. So I mean, you know, it goes pretty quick whenever, you know, I got to do somewhere around I think 20 dozen this time. So I mean, it goes pretty quick. So we'll get a few more batches in, and then we'll show you the setup for our waxing process. Like I said, it's real simple here. Just nice roll and boil. Throw your traps in there, and you can see we just got traps laid out, and just keep throwing them in. So as far as the dog proofs go, real simple. This is all I do. You can see I've got them all laid out here on the ground, and a $1 can of spray paint, and I just spray paint them all white. And you know, it kind of gives a little bit of protection to them, and it makes them stand out. You know, if you're trapping in real sandy soil, I mean, a lot of times this paint won't even last, you know, one catch. But you know, I go ahead and I touch them up through the season. You know, everybody forgets it. This style of trap, the dog proof style, you actually want the critter to find the trap. You know, I see guys trying to camouflage them and hide them, and you know, there's as much of a visual there as there is anything. So you know, you want the critter to find them. So like I said, I just simply lay them out here on the ground, spray them down. You know, the spray paint does not bother a coon. The smell, you know, leave them 3 or 4 days like this and then put them up. It will not bother the coons at all. So quick and easy, and that's how I take care of my dog proofs. All right, so we just put that batch in there, but you can see here the trailer's starting to fill up. We've got quite a few traps going. All these are footholds. They're all going to get waxed. So what we're going to do is we're going to get set up with the wax. You can see it's just right next to my boil pot, and we're going to kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You know, rather than just watching traps boil, we're going to wax them too. Now waxing here, this is the whole process here. You know, this is scent proofing your traps. As far as wax goes, no brand is real better than the other, but you know, you want odorless trap wax. You know, you don't want beeswax or anything with a scent, or else you're defeating your purpose. So anyway, this is just the brand I've got here today. Now the thing about wax is, wax can burn, and you know, I see a lot of guys and they want to put the wax there just on top, and they say as they pull their traps out, you know, it waxes them. Well, you know, that doesn't really work that well. It works to a degree, but wax can actually burn. You don't want your water boiling. And also, if your traps are too hot coming up through the wax, they won't actually grab onto any of the wax. So if you're going to go to all the trouble and time and effort, the best bet is just to set up a separate wax pot like I've got here, and the deeper the better as far as your wax pot. And now what I'll do is I've just got a 1 pound piece of wax here, and you can see my pot, and I know from experience this pot will hold 3 number 4 dukes, which are the biggest trap that I use. So you know, I can dump 3 to 4 at a time in this pot. Now you can see I've got my fire underneath it, and I've heated it up to just right before a boil. If it starts to boil, pull some heat off of it. And you never want it to boil. And so all I'm going to do is, and this saves on wax, is you can just put 1 pound in at a time, and then that way, as your wax, you start losing your wax, then you can keep adding to it instead of just throwing in 3 or 4 or 5 pounds, you know, and then at the end have you know, a couple pounds left over, because you really don't want to reuse your wax. So you can see I've got my water nice and hot. You can see that wax, it's starting to melt. I'll wait for it to melt all the way, and it'll float, of course, and then I'll set up the camera and I'll show you how I dunk them to wax them. Alright, so got all our wax melted here. I'll just show you how I do it. I've got them in bundles of 5, so I just hold 2 up. I set 3 down into the pot at one time. Now you don't want too much wax, and you want some wax on there, so you just have to kind of play with it. Now for me, I like to give it about a 12 to 15 second count. That seems to work quite well for me. You know, I see guys also wanting to spread the jaws with a nail or a stick or something. I personally don't do that. You know, the first time I set them, I'll break out wax around the jaw and I'll clean the dog off. So, I mean, it's no big deal. Once you take them out, give them a little shake. And I'll just set the other 2 in there. Give them a good little shake once you're done, and you can see that nice shine on them. The wax buildup isn't too heavy, but it's just got a nice sheen, nice thin layer of wax. These traps are ready to be set. Now just for a quick visual, that batch of traps right there, that 5 just now came out of the wax. You can see that they haven't cooled off quite yet. They've still got a little bit of a sheen to them. Now that batch of traps right there has come out of the wax and it's cooled down. You can see now you've got this real nice dull but a nice black dark color to them, and that's your finished trap. From here on out, store them, try not to get any scent on them. You know, like I said, all these are my canine traps that we're using, so you know, we're going to try to keep them as scent free as possible. But anyway, that right there is your finished product. You know, I showed you what it looked like before, and you can tell just with these walnuts, you know, it's free and it works great. Alright, so it's the next morning here. I kind of ran out of camera light yesterday evening, so anyway, I figured I'd just show you. We got everything picked up. Everything's all nice and organized into tubs. All my canine traps there, those will all go in just a 55-gallon plastic drum there, and I'll keep it kind of sealed up, and you know, try to keep dirt and other scent out of it until season. I'll pull them out. Like I said, you can see I've got them in bunches of 5, and basically it's easier whenever you go out to make sets. You know, you're always setting 2 traps per location. Just grab 2 bundles, and you know, that's good for 5 sets. So it works out pretty nice. Like I said, everything else is packed up. We're ready to go. One final note here, as I said with the wax, you can see now, since my fire's died down and the wax is cooled, you can see that's all the wax. You can see just that little layer. That's all the wax I have left. So there's no waste with the wax by just adding the wax here and there. And as far as the boil pot, now you can see, because I didn't add water the last 2 batches, you can see this pot really boiled off a lot of the water. And basically what you've got here is a concentrate of your walnut dye. Now what I like to do with this is, I'll take this and I'll put it in a couple 5-gallon buckets, and then throughout the season, you know, as I catch critters, you know, and get dirty traps, I'll take this and put this in my shop where it doesn't freeze, and I'll take my dirty traps and I'll just set them in this this concentrate, and it's more or less like a cold dye. You know, you don't need any heat really, but it puts a new coat of black on them, and you know, the walnuts are pretty strong smelling. It kind of takes the scent away, you know, and then you can just keep rotating them throughout the season, and as you catch your fur. So it works out real well for kind of renewing your traps in the middle of the season. So you kind of reuse your stuff. Other than that, like I said, we got a nice trailer full of traps. We're just a couple weeks out of season now, so we'll go ahead and we'll get all these put up, and hopefully in a couple of weeks we'll start bringing you guys videos from being on the line. So thanks for watching, and until next time.